Have a powerful day, all you unbreakable ones. So together with the bird of resilience, Juan, who is amazed by everything that's happening, we continue to tell you about everything that's going on. And today we'll talk about Ukraine's thriving economy, though with a minus sign, to be honest. Still, it seems that Zelensky has slowly started to achieve his plans, namely the exhaustion of the economy. The truth is, it's not really working out to instantly exhaust Russia's economy, so Ukraine's economy is being depleted even more. And now there are some of the bleakest forecasts. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, which would really surprise me. Let's get started. Look, here we have investment companies predicting Ukraine's economy will grow by a whole 1%. However, here the growth has been downgraded from 1.5% to 1%. But even this huge figure is just a little bit strange because this 1% growth is actually provided by the defense industrial complex. That is, all these drones that everyone is producing. Soon I think even kindergartens will be making and assembling these weapons. They talk about the problem of war escalation, and this affects absolutely all sectors, many sectors beyond just the defense industrial complex. The main reason, yes, is that funding for the defense industry sector is high and accordingly it keeps increasing. And it is increasing not because someone earned something or received some other benefits. No, it's purely due to the injection of money, the pumping of money into Ukraine from the European Union. The main reason is that this year, funding for the defense industry sector will be significantly higher due to international support from the EU in the form of this large package. That is, for some reason the GDP was calculated together with these funds provided, whether they were loans or just aid. Well, whatever you call it, it's an injection. But the civilian sector is suffering more and more, which generally speaking is not surprising since absolutely everything is suffering. Metallurgy is shutting down, coal mining isn't doing well either, especially since the areas where coal can be mined are getting smaller and smaller. The same goes for the gas that Zelensky promised to extract to supply all of Ukraine and not depend on international sources, but for some reason that's not available either. It's strange campaign promises aren't being kept. That's never happened before. And here we go again. What a twist, as we might say. The civilian sector is starting to suffer from the escalation, which basically began around June. And already, according to some June indicators, we see a slowdown in household consumption, which had been a powerful driver of the economy and supported growth in general, all the previous years. And besides that, there are also these constant outcries, oh, the aliens over there abroad in Ukraine, oh, we're there, oh, those aliens. Therefore, money just isn't being sent to Ukraine. That is, those people who used to work abroad and send money to their families in Ukraine now aren't sending anything at all. Because families are slowly starting to, or rather probably already finishing leaving, those who could. By the way, here's one of the not-so-good pieces of news for Ukrainians. The entire European Union will no longer provide temporary protection to Ukrainians. Both men and women who are subject to military service and who couldn't show proof that they are exempt from military service in Ukraine. That's the odd thing. So, initially, lawyers said that this would apply starting March 1, 2027, but now it turns out that's not the case. It can be done like this. Just simply say, yes, we won't accept you anymore. That's it. Goodbye. And wonderful specialists in programming, medicine, geology, teachers, doctors from Somalia, Rwanda, Syria keep coming. But here, everything is just fine. But as for Ukrainians, well, no, we won't accept them, let them stay there, fight, die, whatever, who cares? We have migrants. Apparently that's the kind of reasoning. Well, whatever. By the way, if you're tired of politics, I have another channel where you can relax. It's pure science, popular science, not exactly hardcore science. And there are all kinds of videos here. There are all sorts of interesting discoveries here, like how we all get dumber from the heat and that they found something up in orbit. Plus, there are shorts with highlights if you're interested, so you can listen for a minute instead of, say, 10 minutes. Or, for example, there are hour-long breakdowns of all sorts of contactees. Anunnaki, Hyperboreans, and other inhabitants of those very asteroids who get in touch with various contactees sitting in their own wards. Well, medical ones, obviously, because where else would a contactee sit if not in a ward? Alright, let's move on. Look, here we have something about the economy. There's also a co-owner of Nova Poshta speaking. Here's what he says. The massive shelling on August 5th became the point after which the war shifted to a different level, to the mutual destruction of economies. That's how Nova Poshta co-owner Volodymyr Poprishnyuk assessed the strike's consequences. Today's shelling showed that we are entering a new phase of the war, mutual destruction of economies, destruction on such a scale. There hasn't been anything like this in the rear since the very beginning of the invasion. But here we can recall an old saying. Well, how does it go? While the fat one gets thinner, the skinny one dies. Well, again, there are a lot of questions about the command of the Ukrainian forces there who are basically shelling civilian targets in the rear. They're shelling all those wild berries and the like in Russia in the hope that the Russian economy will collapse any moment now. And we will lift our spirits here, just like some people say in a Telegram channel, for example. There's this guy, Taras Chmut, and this very Chmut. He stated that the thing is, the missiles will eventually run out, but will keep standing just like we always have. But the problem is that all these volunteers, the people living in those basements where drones are made and other such places, in Kiev they'll be standing in studios with warm coffee in their hands or tea or at the very least mineral water. But people are gradually running out. And yesterday there was a video saying that if the Russian Federation mobilizes 500,000 people, which is most likely what will happen in the fall, then Ukraine, we must also find another 500,000 people. There's no other way. But again, all these politically biased figures who speak in studios should really take a look at the difference in population between Russia and Ukraine. It would probably be useful. But anyway, let's see what this Poprishnyuk has to say. He says that in this confrontation, the one who adapts faster wins. Free enterprise finds new ways, instantly reorganizes logistics, and rebuilds what was destroyed. But then again, this raises the question, why is the economy collapsing then? If you have to rebuild what's destroyed every time, businesses will run out of money. A cafe opens, it gets bombed. Who's going to rebuild it? It's good for giants like Nova Poshta, or not just logistics companies but others too. Yes, they can survive for a while thanks to some financial cushion. But even that isn't unlimited. Take Wildberries in Russia as an example. It was such a huge company with billions in revenue. I can't say about profits, but the revenue was definitely there. And suddenly now Wildberries is facing huge problems. Bankruptcy might not be far off if things keep going like this, because it's really hard to operate without warehouses. And in Ukraine, it's basically the same. The warehouses of Rosetka are being bombed, Epicenter's warehouses are being bombed, and so are Nova Poshta's. They're all being bombed. How often can you rebuild these warehouses? Maybe you can, but where will you get the goods? Can you rebuild those as well? That's the real question. And that's not all. The thing is, the economy usually suffers because of corruption. Corruption eats away at the economy like rust eats away at iron. And here it turns out that almost everyone is corrupt. And even such a great figure, a policewoman, a fighter, and so on, is accused of corruption. Ukraine's ambassador to the US, Stefanishina. Suddenly she was given, a notice of suspicion. She now faces a criminal case. Former Ukrainian ambassador to the US, Stefanishina, had bail set at 6 million hryvnias. Honestly, I have no doubt that, as always, just like with Yermak and other figures, there will be some fly-by-night LLC with $100 in starting capital that will bail her out. But that's the point. Still, just imagine what a shame it must be for the whole world that an ambassador, to the US, the ambassador to the US, is a person who is literally under the spotlight of all the media and all politicians. And if the attention is drawn because you have a criminal case, well, that's just insane. And this is just an ordinary ambassador. This person, I honestly don't even understand how. Alright, here we are with Juan. We're still puzzled, but let's see what happened with this Stefanishina. So, the High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine has chosen a preventive measure for former Ukrainian ambassador Olha Stefanishina. The ex-ambassador must appear when summoned by NABU detectives and report her residence, just the usual. What is known is that there is evidence that other individuals acquired property on the suspect's behalf. She also bought a lot of real estate there, and in her mother's name and Sasha's and some other representative of the great Ladno. And she was also looking at a house in the US for $550,000. This is a person with a salary, well, maybe a couple or 3,000, let's say even 5,000. Suddenly, it turns out that she's also looking at a house in the US for $550,000. And who else is there? Someone buying Mercedes cars for $180,000. Who? Real estate for $550,000. Everything would be fine if those earnings could somehow be substantiated. And, okay, that's one thing, but we also have, yes, by the way, right here on my Telegram channel. Subscribe, point your phone or tablet camera at this QR code and you'll get to the Telegram channel. Or there's a direct link in the video description if you're watching me from a mobile device. So, what kind of real estate does this person have? 2 apartments, one in a residential complex and one in Town 11 million hryvnias, an apartment in a business-class residential complex in the capital. A parking space and several non-residential premises. The Mercedes-Benz car is also pretty good. It's a 220D. Well, it's not exactly super expensive, but still. And in addition, she was also negotiating to buy a house in the USA for $550,000. Wonderful. Moreover, her official income did not allow her to purchase such property. In about a year and a half, she earned $3.7 million. And just her 2 apartments alone are worth $11 million. On top of that, there's also a former commander of Air Force Logistics who also became the owner of 6 apartments, 3 houses, 6 land plots, 4 cars, and much more. But that's just 2 people. Just imagine if each of them has 6, 8, or even 10 apartments earned, no doubt, through honest work. And there are several thousand of these people. There are people like that, let's put it this way, they're not even top managers. They're the ones who were propelled from rags to riches through social mobility, so to speak. These thousands of upstarts own thousands or even tens of thousands of apartments. What do ordinary people do? Ordinary people are basically living in poverty right now. Official data says that 72 Ukrainians are below the subsistence minimum, basically in poverty. But we have owners of all these villas, cars, and everything else who first of all were enjoying themselves. They ride around living in luxury. They live like kings. And then some jerk on TV tells you that you're fighting out there, that we have to hold on, that we'll show this and that, and so on. And now they're all fired up, but they're fired up in their studios and in their luxurious homes. Meanwhile, people are being rounded up and sent to the front. And then there are those 500,000 which I've already mentioned. That number didn't come up for nothing. It'll happen soon. I'm sure it'll just keep growing and growing and growing. As for this Stefanishina, instead of keeping quiet, she goes around telling everyone that she's not to blame, that she won't work in public service, that she needs to ensure her family's safety. But what do you call it if you ensure your family's safety at the expense of other families? There's actually a pretty fitting term for that. Let's write in the comments what you think this should be called. That's when one person lives at the expense of another, or even several others, and says that their own family is extremely important, while other families, they don't care, they'll walk right over them. Unfortunately, right now, almost all the people surrounding the powerful leaders in Ukraine are pretty much the same. And on top of that, these strange reshuffles in the Ukrainian government, just swapping one for another, also leaves things, well, just very strange overall. Then there's Umerov, whom they just can't seem to place anywhere. Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, or something else. Recently, the US refused for the second time to let this same Umerov become Ukraine's ambassador to the US. Well, because, come on, what are you even doing? And he himself is also an American citizen. His family has American passports. He owns a lot of real estate in the US. All of it, of course, earned through the most honest work. So what? A US citizen will be the ambassador of Ukraine to the US? That's wonderful. That's just the perfect option. You simply can't find a better one. That's crazy. Honestly, I don't know what else they could come up with that would make us, dear viewers, watch and have our sombrero shrink just like Juan's. What's interesting is that right now there's also Zaluzhny, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK. He hasn't been suspected of corruption yet. But now he's starting to oppose NATO. Just one ambassador is starting to push back against NATO and says that NATO isn't the same anymore. It's like the fox in Krylov's fable saying the grapes are sour. The fox and the grapes. So Zaluzhny says that there are a lot of questions about NATO. He says that he's a supporter of the alliance. But Russia has found countermeasures to almost all of the bloc's weapons. He says that the alliance needs to change, and I talked about this before. He also said that Ukraine will never join NATO. And let me remind you, the whole fuss is about this war. It started with those so-called red lines, about how NATO shouldn't approach Russia's borders. Now it's already right up close, and there's nothing you can do about it. But all of this could have been avoided before the full-scale war started. Back then, well, it could have been limited to some local conflicts, instead of turning it into something global, but now it's too late. Now, a lot of people have died, hundreds of thousands of people are lying in graves, and they're telling us that we won't join NATO, and that we don't need NATO at all. So why the hell, excuse my language, did you start all this for what? So that later you could buy apartments in housing complexes in those very residential complexes? Well, obviously, I think the answer is clear. It's clear. Zaluzhny even went so far as to not attend the meeting with the new British Minister of Defense, that is, the Ukrainian ambassador to Britain, who's supposed to be everywhere, or rather, at every event. That is, he should be present at every event. But the ambassador was nowhere to be found, and he wasn't there. Moreover, the president's office and Zaluzhny himself explain it differently. Some say that he wasn't even invited at all, that's crazy. And the other says that Zaluzhny didn't do it and chose another event instead. Which one? Well, obviously, apparently, going to some restaurant for something tasty. And why would he even need all that? That's work, after all. And attending some other events, too. You know where you can go. The ambassador knows better, because when the ambassador goes to a restaurant, he just gets himself some pickles and cabbage. That's the kind of workers we have. So what? And Zelensky keeps telling everyone everywhere that there are no air defense missiles, and less construction back and forth. I'm just curious, but what if there are no weapons? During the Great Patriotic War, if you didn't have tanks but wanted to create the impression that you did, well, there were cases when they made them out of plywood so that planes flying overhead would see them and think there was some kind of reserve there. But if you don't have missiles, at least keep quiet about it. Come on, for goodness sake. Now, well, you can send any kind of junk that explodes, and it will explode because, well, it reaches its target. Because you don't have any weapons. Why are you talking about this? What kind of methods of warfare are these? I'm not a war expert, of course, and I never will be, thank God. But when you hear things like this, you start to doubt their professional competence altogether. It's not even about being some kind of top-level managers, but just being able to do something as simple as eating borscht, bringing a spoonful of borscht to your mouth. Are they even capable of that with such mental abilities? I don't know. Let's write about it in the comments again. Juan and I will read all of it carefully. So, what do you think? We're measuring the power meter with our specialist power meter. Top class. The power meter shows strong results. Everything is great. Now let's move on to the next accessory. These are power goggles that protect us from the penetrating radiation of the Patsiriets. And let's see what those representatives of the Ukrainian political elite have been saying over the past hours or days. They've said a lot of things, and we're going to watch them now. There's this one character who says there shouldn't be any elections at all. Obviously, the person wants to keep making money, sitting in his kitchen with a Ukrainian flag and a serious look on his face, getting paid for his appearances.
Головна і єдина мета, яка має об'єднувати суспільство, владу, це виграти у цій війні. А всі ті, хто зараз займається підготовкою до виборів, вони аферисти. Але по-вашому, головне виграти війні, а тоді будемо приймати.
Well then, go fight, man. You put on a t-shirt with the Kremlin falling apart, hung a Ukrainian flag on your kitchen wall, had a nice meal, washed it down with something, and now you're telling everyone that now it's time to fight. Oh, look at us, just look at us. This is crazy. There's also this bearded freak who talks about all sorts of things. I don't come across him that often, but when I do, just look at that shiny tunic. Is this a club or something? Is this some kind of club-style military look? Or what is it? What is this?
It's a signal to Ukrainians that, unfortunately, the safest place is at home. As strange as it may seem, today Ukraine is the safest place for Ukraine.
Ukraine is the safest. No, for people like you, of course it's a safe place because you can just hang another flag in your kitchen. You see, they're all the same, like those two brothers from the box, and these ones, they're brothers too. Well, from other places, but still. And each of them is spouting some nonsense, and it all sounds exactly the same. This guy says that the people will fight until victory. This one says that Ukraine is safe. Well, it makes sense, and these are people who live both in Ukraine and abroad, Ukrainians. They sit and watch this nonsense and think, what are you talking about? Why are you saying this? No one is going to believe it anymore. All right, 3 years ago there were still those who believed, but now what's even going on?
And of course, this situation in Poland, in other European countries, after all 5 years of war have passed, maybe women and children have the right to live in more or less safe European societies, although you can't really call Polish society that, and it's time for the men to return home.
Well, yes, of course, it's time for the men to return home. So why are you sitting here in a shiny shirt and not at the front? I honestly don't understand.
To defend Ukraine, as only Ukraine can protect Ukrainians.
Well, obviously it's spreading more nonsense to the masses, so who else? Let's take a look. Let's watch him too. There's more. This genius is still talking.
We just don't win the game. That's why we work with these guys who show a lot of heroism. In the USSR, there are cases where someone tries to flee from the vehicle or jumps out the window.
There's no shiny military tunic here. Apparently he went to the club, took it off, and put on some kind of pajama-style t-shirt.
The man spent some time with us in basic training. We talked with them, and every time I'm there, I tell them about some historical discussions and directions.
Historical what? Vectories? What's that? A vectory? Make up your own terms. I remember there was one of the Russian classic writers who made up words. Honestly, I don't remember that writer. A good writer, I mean the character here without any negative connotation. But this genius comes up with vectory, I don't know.
I'm glad to see something is happening and how people are changing. Fate has given you the chance to defend your homeland, like the Cossacks and Zaporozhians.
Lord, I can't listen to this nonsense anymore. Even behind the scenes of power with these knights and all, with these Zaporozhians already, Lord, how many hundreds of years they've been gone and still. That's how things are with us. Goodbye, everyone.